primarily. So you're surrounded by English. You're going to start to dream in English. So actually, English development ends up being really enhanced in a big way just by coming to EF Academy in the US. But we also have all the other subjects. Right? There's math and science and social studies,
Right.
And arts even.
Now, Jason, a lot of people in Indonesia, right, they know about EF, at least they have heard of the name, right, but not many of them have actually know about EF Academy yet. So maybe you can tell us a little bit more about EF Academy, what do they do, what do you do, for example, in EF Academy more?
Great, yes, thank you, Tommy. So yeah, I'm thrilled, by the way, that EF is so well known here in Indonesia, primarily for the kids and teens schools. And I will say that they work, and I don't work for the EF Kids and Teens area, I work for EF Academy, but I'm actually usually quite impressed by the students who come through those Kids and Teens programs because their working English really is superior to students that don't necessarily have that same background. And you do need to have working English to study in the United States, right? Not just the college level, but the high school level as well, because we do teach in English, right? And yes, EF Academy is more flexible with international students who might have an accent or some, grammar or technical issues at a young age entering grade 9 or grade 10. But at the end of the day, if you're going to have really deep, philosophical or scientific, literary and analytical conversations, you need to develop academic English eventually as well. So having a really strong foundation in conversational, usable, practical English is a really great start. So EF Academy, again, would be like a really big next step. So the difference is that EF Academy is a full functioning boarding high school, right? So it's not just English. Of course, English development is part of that experience, and it's immersion English in this case, because you speak English with your teachers and your classmates. You use English, even with your roommates on your sports teams and your clubs and activities. Anytime you leave the campus, you're in the US. You're in an English-speaking country primarily. So you're surrounded by English. You're going to start to dream in English. So actually, English development ends up being really enhanced in a big way just by coming to EF Academy in the US. But we also have all the other subjects. Right? There's math and science and social studies,
Right.
And arts even, right? So, a huge highlight of our New York campus is the art portfolio program, where students are actually sometimes developing their art portfolios to such a high level that they end up in places like Parsons or Pratt or Rhode Island School of Design. Not that that's all we do, but it's definitely a niche at EF Academy. So to describe EF Academy, to try to describe it in a more brief way, is that it is an American international boarding high school with students from several dozen countries that are actually living and learning together. So it's almost like a United Nations style boarding school that happens to have phenomenal locations. We're right outside of New York City and in Pasadena, which is right next to Los Angeles, California. And the locations really enhance the experience too.
I see, and that's going to be a very interesting experience, I think, if they do get admitted to EF Academy, right? Especially, I think, as a young person, let's say, they get exposed to many people from different countries, right? Learning more about cultures.
Right. Well, the whole idea is that the world is a lot bigger than just the U.S. and Indonesia. That said, of course, the U.S. and Indonesia are the world's second and third largest democracies, so we probably should get to know each other a lot better than we do, right? But yeah, in all seriousness, it's a lot of the opportunities of the future in terms of developing our global competency. Knowing English is the first step, but actually getting to understand people from other countries in Asia or Europe or Africa or the Middle East or Latin America and the United States. It's a really revolutionary, eye-opening experience, and there's no other boarding school in the world, as far as I'm concerned, that can really kind of do what we're doing in the way that we do it. So that's the reason I've actually been at the school for over 10 years. Everybody knows in this podcast where I graduated from college. I probably could choose to work at any number of schools or even in any number of industries, but I think international education at EF Academy is really, really special. It's innovative. It's on the cutting edge of global education practices, and it's a really exciting place to work and to be a student, of course.
Of course, right, okay. Now, Jason, can you walk us through the typical journey when a student get admitted to EF Academy? Maybe starting from, let's say, the application process.
Definitely, definitely. And this is where I want to actually highlight my amazing colleagues that are based right in central Jakarta. So we have Gladys Perdana, as well as Martina. I don't want to butcher her last name. I call her Martina. So
Okay.
Gladys and Martina. And they're based at the EF office that is in central Jakarta. And so they are kind of our local full-time representatives of EF Academy, but they also, of course, are partnering with places like ICAN, because we can't necessarily just meet everybody. We need places like ICAN to actually find really great students to actually join our school. We can't do it alone, right? 2 people in a country of a couple 100 million is not going to do the job, so thank you, ICAN, for your help. But what we do is we really want to start having a consultative approach, all right? So before a student applies, all right, we don't take blind applications, all right? We don't want to just have open applications on our school website, actually. We want to also filter down that volume because, again, we can't necessarily go through thousands and thousands of applications a year in a reliable, authentic way. So what we really encourage is for families, the parents and the students, by the way, we want students directly involved as much as possible because they're the ones who are going to get on an airplane and they're the ones who are going to fly to California or New York, maybe Oxford, London, England if they choose the UK route that we have. It's not my area of expertise as much, but I should highlight we do have a UK campus also. But we really want families to actually discuss their motivations, their hopes, their goals, their interest in terms of the student's socio-emotional development, and of course university trajectory, which it's amazing I didn't mention before, but of course we are a college preparatory boarding school on top of everything else that I actually said. So university guidance is tantamount. It's part of what you pay for when you join the school. But we really want to get to know a family and then make a decision together if it makes sense to continue applying and move forward. The application itself is remarkably straightforward. Once we get through to the point where we say, okay, we think it makes sense for you to take time on an application, because an EF Academy application in total should take about an hour and a half to do. But half of that is an English assessment. So if you have already done an English assessment in the last 6 months, whether it's an IELTS or a TOEFL or a Duolingo, we will accept that and save you 45 minutes. Otherwise, we have a free online version that we can use for you. So we do need an English assessment. We need an application form, which is very straightforward. We're answering basic academic and health-related questions to make sure that if students do have, for example, any learning disabilities such as ADHD or dyslexia, that we are aware. That's not a reason that we reject students. By the way, we just need to be aware up front to make sure that our learning support teams can support whatever needs you have or get the extended time on exams that you're actually entitled to if you're diagnosed with one of these conditions. We ask even about sort of emotional needs or diet, right? So we understand a lot of students in Indonesia will require halal cuisine. That's fine. We just like to collect this data up front. We do need at least 2 years of transcripts as well. So, for example, a student applying into grade 9 at EF Academy in Pasadena, California, we would really want to see their record from grade 8 and grade 7. Now, of course, most of our students apply midway through a school year, so round up to 2.5, 2.5 years of academic records. And we don't demand perfection as much as we love to see lots and lots of A's on a student's transcript. We know that as a school, we are very effective at educating young people. So if a student is more average or even struggling in a couple of subjects, that doesn't mean we can't take an honest good look and see if that student might be successful in kind of a U.S. education environment, which is really different from the education environment in Indonesia, where frankly students are distracted with 12 to 14 different courses. At EF Academy, we really cap it at 8. So it is possible that students struggling in 1 or 2 areas in Indonesia might actually be fine in the U.S. So we want to give a fair chance to students. Then the favorite part, of course, the process is the interview itself, right? Which we've covered about 45 minutes of a really pretty open-minded, genuine conversation in which we try to determine if a student is correctly motivated and if they're going to be successful and happy at EF Academy. Because if they're not, maybe they shouldn't come. Right? It's that simple, right? We don't want to set up a student for failure. It's a really big deal to fly all the way to California or New York or the UK. We want to make sure it's going to go smoothly. that the parents' investment is a sound one, and that we're going to be able to do right by them and actually prepare them to have a successful university application experience also. So we also, during that interview, start to envision what their school experience might look like. It's where I might start recommending clubs or activities, or yeah, exactly. We're going to start to put together the image and start to imagine together what their EF Academy journey might look like.
Right, okay. So maybe we can talk about that, right? What's the boarding life situation like at EF Academy, Jason?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's one of the most exciting things about the school, frankly. So being that we're this United Nations style boarding high school, one thing I can promise our Indonesian students is that you will not have Indonesian roommates, right? Now, by the way, there's nothing wrong with Indonesian friends, right? We'd be more than happy if at dinner you get together with, Indonesian students and take an English break, speak Indonesian for a little bit and talk about your day. But what we like is to actually mix different cultures together as part of this multicultural immersion high school, sort of, again, international values kind of space. So you might actually come from Jakarta or Surabaya, and you're going to maybe have a roommate from Paris and a roommate from Tokyo, or maybe a roommate from I don't know, let's say Italy and a roommate from Texas. Okay. That's possible. So you're going to actually learn a lot from your roommates, but at the same time, we want to highlight the fact that we don't expect you to give up your Indonesian culture or values. If anything, we want you to share that with your friends, with your roommates, with your teachers. A lot of us that are on the faculty, we work at EF Academy because it is so exciting and interesting for us to actually cater to an international student body where everybody's different perspectives and backgrounds and foods and religions and really everything about students just adds to the patchwork kind of fascinating quilt or melting pot that is our school. And in some ways, if you think about it, the United States is a melting pot of cultures in and of itself. And so we may not be majority American students at our school, but the American students who we have, who might be your roommates in some cases, they're going to be the most open-minded American teenagers you could possibly meet because they're choosing international school, right? They could otherwise be comfortable. So dorm life, it's actually pretty organized, and it's flexible to a point. We do have some rules just to make sure things stay calm and orderly in the dorms. So without running through an entire daily schedule, I will say the first lesson starts at 9 a.m. You're welcome, everybody. Turns out that science tells us teenagers need more sleep. So we start school at 9 a.m. at EF Academy. That's not something other schools in the U.S. necessarily do, by the way. But you'll wake up, you'll get ready for the day, you'll grab breakfast in time for your class at 9. Fast forward, class is over basically at 3:30 or 3:45, depending on the exact campus and day. But that's when we have clubs and activities after school. Some of that could be sports related, doesn't have to be. At some point you might use the fitness center, you might actually get a pass to leave the campus. So EF Academy are in these fairly nice, safe neighborhoods, so it's possible for students to walk down the hill from campus in New York, for example, and grab some milk bubble tea, right? Or some sushi. There's even a gift shop. If you have a friend who's having a birthday, you could grab some balloons and bring them back up to campus with you. So we believe the neighborhood is safe and relaxed enough that we're completely fine with students in all grade levels actually exploring the local neighborhoods around Thornwood, New York, and Pasadena, California. It's a little different when we're talking about the big cities, New York and Los Angeles. We have a few more sort of safeguards and rules around that. But it is possible for students to, of course, go either on a scheduled field trip or by themselves when they're old enough. But then the dorm life, we do have study hall in the evenings. And I think this is something that parents love and that students might not love at first, but that they end up appreciating and understanding. So we have this 2-hour window of time from about 8 o'clock to 10 o'clock at night on school nights. All right, everybody, that means not Friday and Saturday nights, all right? We don't have school on the weekend, but from Sunday through Thursday, students are focused on academic work and homework and studying for a devoted 2 hours, which for most students is enough time. If you end up tackling something like the IB diploma program, you might need 3 hours. That's a really rigorous program. Worth it, but rigorous. But because our students are doing their homework and studying at the same time, it means that they're available and free and flexible to socialize at the same time or to do activities at the same time. So we basically are teaching students really important time management skills actually as part of their residential life experience. But I don't want to forget to mention all the fun that we actually have, because boarding school is not just school, it's your home away from home. right? So at EF Academy, we don't have uniforms, right? We have just a basic, responsible, comfortable dress code, but no uniforms. We want you to be comfortable and express yourself. Right. We also do have activities after school, especially on the weekends. We might do fire pit nights when the weather is good to make good old-fashioned American s'mores, right? You take your graham crackers and your chocolate and your marshmallows over a fire. It's delicious, full of sugar. But you bond with your friends. We'll have video game tournaments. We'll do movie nights. So EF Academy New York, specifically, we actually have a theater at the campus, which of course is used for music and drama and assemblies, but we can screen things like Spider-Man or Harry Potter, and we have popcorn machines and can actually do movie nights at school, or talent shows or karaoke nights. So we really do try to actually engage students and make sure that they're actually having fun and having enriching experiences outside of just their academic timetable.
I kind of regret not being able to admit it to the academy now. I mean, like, it sounds like it's such a great experience. Even the learning part is actually pretty fun, I think.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, and I think it's, whether you're doing the IB diploma program or you're not, there's different options, by the way. I think the fact that you're in an international classroom with a really motivated teacher actually makes a really dramatic difference. I hear from a lot of students, for example, I'll just give one example, that they don't like history, right? They find history maybe to be a bit boring and they have to memorize all these dates. But if, let's say, you're learning about a subject like World War II, and you're at an international boarding school like EF Academy, in your class learning about World War II, yes, you might be from Indonesia, but you're going to have classmates from the USA. You're going to have classmates maybe from France, from Germany, and Italy, and Japan, right? And so and it's done in a very respectful way, right? We do respect each other as individuals, as people, right? Students that are 15, 16 years old in 2024 were not responsible for World War II or any of those events. But it is fascinating to learn, like, okay, well, what did your grandfather teach you about this, right? Or how do you, for example, how does a German student learn about the Holocaust in German school, right? So, how do the Japanese actually feel about the U.S. dropping nuclear bombs on their country? In so doing, freeing Indonesia, right? That's just a side effect here. But how does that all tie in? And history really starts to come alive at an international school. But yeah, I would say whatever the subject is, art, history, science, you're going to find that the dynamic is just completely different in this, multicultural international setting where, again, the teachers are also making a really conscious decision to come and work at EF Academy to teach students from around the world in the subjects that they're passionate about. So I'm also jealous, Tommy. EF Academy didn't exist when I was a kid. EF Academy is not a brand new boarding school, but it opened its doors in New York and Oxford in 2008. I was already at Harvard as an undergraduate at that point. So, but no, I'm really excited about it. And for those students who are lucky enough, for the families that do have the resources to be able to make that decision and afford the school, we would absolutely, we feel really strongly about it. We're really passionate about the program we have.
I see, okay. Now, Jason, as someone deeply involved, right, with the admission process, can you tell us about the qualities and then also the characteristic, the traits that you're looking for in potential students and candidates?
Definitely. We actually kind of define them in some ways to make it easier for folks and just to, again, be a little bit more organized in our own kind of pedagogy and culture as a school. So what we're really looking for are 4 pillars: learner, leader, scholar, and global citizen. Now, these do mean slightly different things. So when we talk about a learner, we mean somebody who actually cares about learning. Someone who actually, they don't just do school because they're required to go to school, right, by law, or that their parents send them. But students that actually have intellectual curiosity, they have interest, they want to learn. All right, so learning, when we say learner, it's almost more about an attitude towards learning. When we say leader, right, we also want to highlight that this doesn't just mean winning, right? It doesn't just mean being the best or being number one. That's fine, right? You certainly can be the best at something or be number one at something, but remember that true leadership actually involves bringing others with you, all right? It's advocating for others, actually bringing people to your level, actually, inspiring and motivating people to understand your perspective or to join your team. Right, so leadership really involves inspiring and including others, not being exclusive or selfish about winning. So learner, leader, scholar. Now, scholar is more technical, right? When we talk about developing scholarly abilities, we're talking about things like academic research, right? How do you know whether a source that you're using for your research, whether it's biased or authentic? Or is it biased? Then therefore do you need to find the other side of the story and actually highlight both sides? Are you citing the sources properly, right? Academic honesty is a really big topic in Western education. We get really upset when students pass off work that is not truly their own if they're using something like ChatGPT or not citing their sources correctly. And yes, students, we know the difference. So it's a tool, not something you should necessarily be using on all your assignments. So scholarly things like using the scientific method, doing proper research, being able to actually structure a proper academically written essay, right? So those are scholarly skills. And then global citizen is this sort of nebulous but really sort of special topic that we really feel is something that we're trying to enhance at school. Of course, just by being around students that have different national or racial or religious or cultural perspectives than you do. And being a global citizen means having empathetic values towards those who are different from you and have other cultures. It doesn't mean agreeing. All right? This is where I want to be careful. It doesn't mean acknowledging or agreeing that every culture must be exactly treated equal or that every value has equal standing. No, for example, you might have more traditional values based on your background, and you can hold those. You don't have to release those or let those go. The goal, you're not going to just become an American teenager by coming to school. Be proudly Indonesian, be proudly yourself in an American model or an international mindset where at least you can understand where other people are coming from, where you don't just shut them down or shut them out. Because being a global citizen is going to be really important in the world of today and tomorrow. I mean, in terms of your career, a lot of the companies you're going to work for that you're hoping to work for are international businesses, right? You need to be able to collaborate and work with customers and colleagues from all over the world and know their work style and know what they care about, their priorities, their fears, right? At the same time, it's there's really fun things you can frankly do with global competency and global citizenship. It could be arts and entertainment, right? Maybe you take a traditional story from Indonesia that people in the UK or the US might not know very well and turn it into the next massive Netflix hit, right? I mean, that's completely possible. The sky's the limit and the world is your oyster. So really developing students to be kind of globally competent and open and able to actually operate on a cross-cultural team in a professional or personal setting is another pillar that we're not only looking for incoming students, but of course trying to develop in our students as they become graduates.
I see, okay. Now, Jason, what is a university preparation looks like, for EF Academy students, especially for, let's say, top US universities, let's say?
Right. No, it's an excellent question and something we know that a lot of parents are especially focused on. Mm-hmm. So I did mention EF Academy for all of the amazing kind of cultural components and being a United Nations in a high school and activities and enrichment, being in New York and California or Oxford. We are college preparatory boarding schools, all right? So we don't want people to think we don't focus on that. We absolutely do. And in fact, our university counseling begins in 9th grade. So EF Academy, which is not what all schools do, by the way. We actually have a devoted university and academic counseling team at each campus. These are not classroom teachers, all right? These are not your standard guidance counselor at an American public school. They are hired and paid well to specifically work with students on actually helping the students actually develop their profile in a way that will be attractive to top universities in the US and the UK or Europe or Indonesia, right? We're actually pretty open-minded. Most of our students do end up continuing university in the country of their campus, but some don't. Some will go to the Netherlands or go someplace else. So our university counselors are open internationally. But really, a lot of the university preparation, some of it is from the coursework that you're doing, right? Including things like the International Baccalaureate Diploma in New York or the A-levels in Oxford, right? Those are university prep courses that you're taking, or advanced placement, AP courses in Pasadena. So we have the academic piece, but the university counselors are especially in grade 9, they're really exploring students' strengths, right? Just figuring out what are you good at? What should your story encompass? What do we want to highlight and focus on? Grade 10 is really more of a career exploration where we're looking with students and saying, okay, at some point, you probably need a job. You probably do need to earn income. You probably do need to contribute to society and the workforce in some way. Based on your skills and your interests, what do we think might be compatible for you? And can we introduce you to some of these things? Once we hit grade 11, now this is something you might not know in Indonesia because of a different university admission structure here where you take a really big exam that determines your future. In the US, we actually apply for university in the first semester of grade 12, which means there's a lot of attention and pressure on your 11th grade year, all right? So not only are students expected to perform really well and produce a lot of really excellent work in grade 11, but this is when we're really focused on starting to create your university list, right? And actually figuring, okay, well, if you want to study architecture, what school should be on your list, right? Or if you want to study law or economics or medicine, right? Or maybe something more unique, right? We have some students who actually end up going to Embry-Riddle Aeronautical College because they want to be pilots or do aerospace design. So part of our university counseling is also introducing students not only to the top universities that are world famous, but also just identifying programs that might not be as famous in Indonesia or any other country for that matter, and actually saying, hey, there's this really special program that actually, if this is the industry you want to go to, this is where all the best industry professionals are recruiting from and hiring from. So we can give really nuanced special advice that just has so much information about the local sort of university economy, if you will, and work with students on actually preparing for that. Now, on the outside of that, I have to remind students there are things like English level that you need to be thinking about. So if you join a US high school, by the way, from grade 9 and above, you are exempt from the TOEFL, which is great. It's a huge perk of starting in grade 9. If you start later, it's okay. It just means you actually have to prepare for a TOEFL or a Duolingo. If you're going to the UK, IELTS is the preferred exam there, so you have to think about that. And you can practice with your fellow students, because the fact is we are an American international school, and a lot of your classmates will also be taking that same exam. So you've got plenty of study buddies for something like that. Same with the SAT exam, if you're choosing to take that in the United States. So we also, by the way, invite lots of university admissions representatives to come to our school. We have like a college fair on campus every year that all students are able to go to and learn about different choices and options. Also, at the beginning of grade 12, right during the peak application season, we do a boot camp. This is what we call it, right? Boot camp typically refers to military drills, right? But we're talking about that in terms of university application. So making sure that your personal statement draft is actually looking really good and ready to go in your application. You know, have you secured your letters of recommendation in 11th grade from 2 of your academic teachers? You know, are you writing your supplemental essays and focusing on these things? Are you meeting your deadlines and what you need to worry about and focus on? So applying to universities in the US in particular is actually pretty complex. And that's not to scare people, it's just because the US does take such a holistic, well-rounded approach to admissions where, yes, they look at your grades and your coursework, but they're looking at so much else and so much more in depth that our specialists are there to keep students really organized and on task and again, helping them actually build their student story and in effect their human story and their socio-emotional development and maturity in a way that is going to be attractive to universities and make them realize, okay, this candidate, they're probably going to be happy and successful at this university.
Okay. Now, lastly, Jason, do you have any advices, for students in Indonesia who are hoping to attend, to go to top U.S. universities?
Absolutely. I would definitely suggest starting younger. Now, again, if you're already 17, I might have slightly different advice for you than if you're 13 or 14. So I want to start by giving my advice to the younger students and parents of younger students out there, because you do have more time and flexibility to make an impact on your trajectory towards applying to a top U.S. university. So my number one piece of advice is encourage students, don't force or pressure students, all right? So students, I'm giving you a little bit of flexibility here if you hear me, but you also do have to put in the work. So what I mean by this is if a student, let's say a parent says, well, I want my child to be an engineer. Great. We can't all be engineers, right? And if a student just doesn't love math or doesn't love physics, why on earth should they devote their time and attention to focusing on engineering? It doesn't make sense. There's so many other lucrative, fun, exciting career options that are not engineering, right? So being open-minded and trying lots of different things and really trying to identify where you feel in your flow is a really important thing that students and parents need to think about. And when I say in your flow, I mean when you have activities, I want to be clear, I mean academic activities, not video games, right?
Okay.
It's very easy to get invested in video games for 5 hours and not look up. I mean not that, but if you can think about intellectual topics that you could just read about for hours or documentaries that you really love, lean into that, right? Lean into that, because if you can eventually focus on something like that in university or your career, then your life will be sustainable and you're going to develop a really great balance between your academics and your activities and your family, because life is not that short, all right? I hate the phrase life is short. That's something maybe old people say or that young people think is true. But I'm 37 years old and I feel like I've had a wonderful life already and I still have, many, many decades to go, I hope. But life is not that short, and education is a marathon, not a sprint. So my number one piece of advice, especially for those younger students, is really take stock of like who you are and what motivates you and what drives you, and think, what would you like to do, right? Like how can you be a good person and help society and have a good income yourself? In your way, right? Not necessarily everyone's way, but I think a lot of teenagers are so obsessed with fitting in, right? And I think social media sometimes, unfortunately, emphasizes this as an unhealthy way, particularly for girls. But it's not about fitting in, all right? There's too much emphasis on that. It's about being yourself, right? And feeling a sense of belonging and self-confidence that you are who you are, and you're wonderful and special and unique in your way. So really leaning into your uniqueness, not just trying to fit in. Now, for students that are trying to be more strategic and more technical, particularly if, let's say, you're already 16 or you're already 17, it's not to say that previous advice for younger students is irrelevant. It is for you throughout your life. But I would say there are certain strategic things that can help increase your chances of getting into top universities. So if you are, let's say, in grade 10 and you have an option to do an international baccalaureate diploma in grade 11 and 12, assuming your grade 10 grades and results are fine, I wouldn't recommend that for everyone. That's an amazing preparation for universities around the world because of what it requires of students. It hits on all the priorities: intellectual curiosity, emotional intelligence, global competency. So it's a really, really great preparation for students for universities. But let's say you're already in grade 11, or maybe you're already in grade 12. I think it's just important to that advice that I gave for younger students, do that in college, right? Because your undergraduate college, as valuable and as important as that is, it's not going to be the end of your education. A lot of you are going to go off to law school or business school or medical school or graduate studies. So make the most of the opportunities that you have at your fingertips. Don't spend time regretting or worrying about the past or worrying about what other people are doing. You still have time to maximize your own education and your own life.
Okay. Alright, I think that concludes our podcast. Thank you very much, Jason. And terima kasih teman-teman ICAN Folk yang sudah menonton ya. Nah, jika teman-teman ingin mengetahui lebih jauh tentang IF Academy ya, nanti kami akan taruh nomornya di bawah gitu ya. Jadi terima kasih banyak teman-teman yang sudah menonton, dan sampai jumpa di episode podcast kami berikutnya. Bye bye.
Terima kasih, dadah.